Hello, my name is Anthony Wall. Before the long term and then short term before the World Trade Center attack, Connecticut Intercities names the honor of the state judicial branch offices and the honor of the state corrections offices. They had roles with predicate acts with facts with a whole bunch of different countries, including people from Saudi Arabia, and they had the same problem there. This is relative to where we have types of experts who jump into people's conversations, including the religions. For example, the religious books of the Old Testament and the Quran. They have criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, wrought readings of them, leaving out how both of those books come with parts at the beginning of them that dictate how to read those books and defend them. And they were written with consciousness, knowing that the difference between the people attacking the religions and the people defending them would be self-valued by them, used by the breaching method. Because when they speak about their own difference and other people's difference is a punk face. It is recorded where and how I had to beg Judge Napolitano all this time on social media, and I haven't had a response. They've been showing him fabricated transcripts regarding it. Wethersfield police have roles of more child sex offenders and other medical offenders, and including elderly homes, families involved at the same time. People at 3 spots at the end of the Bernal Turnpike and next to them are increasingly involved with planting fake ties, fake natures of ties to me on my street, with the people involved with federal evidences crimes with the Wethersfield Police Department and the New Britain Superior Court and Harper Courts increasingly since I was a kid. Increasingly, these are people associated with the Connecticut District Court. I'm learning more about it also with the silences they leak, the same people that are pretending to be against leaking. In other words, we have black people's whites of eyes to see clearer than day. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought too. They are the readings of reality, and like what caused witch trials. That alone can be used to show criminal incompetence and worse, self-value because being have been used remotely regarding how to interpret reality. Witch trials are about that breaching method. No matter who made that, what extent they were made up there, about that breaching method was entrenched before our founders were born and through their lives. This has role self-value using what our founders said, leaving out what they declassified that, leaving out the breaching method itself, leaving out what nature demonstrates about that and demonstrated about it too. Because that breaching method knew they would or be sensed. So you guys have a sickness with Boolean logic and with exceptions, exception nature relative to how nature is complete. Nature shows us it is functional, how it is distinct identity of hyper invisible but still discernible, but also with distinct identities of parts of it of the hyper invisible but still discernible. In other words, so for example, all the parts of speech are about the invisible but still discernible. Why and how we need more than one name for a verb is about the hyper invisible but still discernible, which is grouped 5 ways distinctly from how it is grouped 3 ways. By and as its identity that we could only discern to an extent. But wherever its identity is, it comes simultaneously with its identity of relationship, its complete identity of relationship to itself that won't change. And the only increasing value of that. All exception nature or demonstration of other, and of a special difference also being a concentrated difference, where the identity of all space / existence will only stay positive onto all parts of itself equally, while it is simultaneously staying positive and negative to all parts of itself equally. You say, well, how could both be? Because it's a concentrated, temporary, / lasting value / value progression position that we have too long forsaken too, by the way. Because we can be systems tactically ulterior from its own. But it forces a special difference from here in demonstration of that. Forced space nature transfer. Worse than death, not death. Forced space nature transfer. Nature being used as a word for identity. The same reason we need more than one word. We need to appreciate more than one word for a verb. So, on a mass scale, they pretend not to understand people and they change what people say when they speak about predicate acts with facts, even if they don't use that word. But people don't use that word, the phrase. But predicate acts with facts are behind all kinds, and their difference is racket. See, we have the same colorized, different colorized at the same time. Always, because there's an identity of hyperdifference, inseparable from all subjects individually grouped and together, for its identity of volume science. So people are pretending that things are debatable that are not debatable, who are building upon roles with, for example, the first campus I went to in Wethersfield has educators over Ray Reynolds and has a Ray Reynolds, increasingly with names next to that campus, involved with conscious identity theft, fraud, slanders against me. And he was too young. We didn't know it was nothing personal against him. We didn't even communicate. And the only communications we had were influenced by others that were involved with this. And they don't know the extent of it because everyone's being used remotely, criminally, foreign influence, tactically, delusions raw. And for example, as we could discern with the relativity of the names next to that campus, which closed the year after that. Now it's reportedly an elderly home or whatever. Then I went to a campus. The campus I went after that also had people on the sides of it. That's another part of town. I went for 1 year at Emerson Williams in Wethersfield. There are names on the side of the house involved with a Cololo and a Smith family near me, with a whole bunch of people tied to them that I don't know the names of, and some I do, with the police and courts switching and forging names, with overt criminal enterprises and private ones and a whole bunch of foreign families too, with use of location/S collusion. See, this breaching method knew that right where and how we could discern collusion/S, like with witch trials, A through Z have been as formal identities and convictions and conviction nature regarding what caused it, what it was value as, and leaving out what was simultaneously recorded. And that's being and have been self-valued, because there are self-valued roles measuring and maintaining other communicated for America's founders and for other countries' founders than they communicated for themselves, using what they said, leaving out what they declassified about that. In other words, our founders obviously communicated for us not to interpret what they said, leaving out the breaching method that was measuring everyone collusions with itself through themselves, having been sustained. Otherwise, and everyone complained about any part of it, that body was sensed, including if it was a majority of people as a body, including if it was everyone, black pupils. We are in a semi-ancient trap that came from before modern religious messengers were born. So I asked you to accept as evidences the actual discernible delusions of the science, of the religions, and of the sciences. So to be able to do this, you have to be able to appreciate where and how the beginning of the Old Testament and the beginning of the Quran, they come with parts that dictate how to defend those books that no one pays attention to, no one even realizes it, because it gives also simultaneously the obligations and the right for an individual to demonstrate remote possession of, quote, groupthink, unquote, for example. In other words, they're forcing leaders incapable of defending their uses of bullying logic, and the difference between them more guilty with that, or the people as locations, areas, and states are forcing leaders A through Z to entertain impositions and relative economics, voices in nations' adaptations that can't defend themselves and afford to be, let alone to protract. The short words of our of the communications of our founders, distinct from what they said again. Our founders communicated for us not to leave out and and to observe how other was blamed for what they told us to blame, which is the breaching method for the cause of slavery, which was entrenched in northern colonies and southern colonies before they were born. Into that context of torture, extortion, and slavery. Fact human nature slavery, therefore physical slavery of every single person, increasingly. That's why and how the same countries that have means to traverse the earth and and cranes and cars and stuff like that, they have self-valued roles with suburbs having been designed before America's founders were even born. As a landscape theater tactically denatured identity of grounds identity relationship to itself. As Earth system, what causes positive or negative value nature progressions, employing things like hunger and thirst through systems abridged, tactical terror than its own identity of relativity to positive and negative. No. See, there's a difference between criminal insidiousness, positive natures of positives, like peace, or truths used for lies, or truths used to screen lies, or truths used just to force that quality of fact-checking nature that prevents proper use of /s of finite details. Black people grouped and together simultaneous / hyper simultaneous ones. One's hyper simultaneous because we know the only extent of the complete identity of the hyper simultaneous we could discern, but we could discern that it is the one generating all the plural parts of itself. And that is as ourselves. We have science is abridged. The Constitution unabridged is a policy / hyper policy. I'm not even a lawyer. Lawyers are criminally foreign influence used remotely are all sides of criminal and civil cases originally and still. And the difference between them, criminally foreign influence use of the locations worse, or the branch of the government, or the intelligence tied to them, or the news. News increasingly has collusions with all kinds of natures and methods of organized crime, / S, and all kinds of natures of crime scenes. WFSB attached me to fake conversations with them, also with intelligence next to them through time, intercities. These are Rocky Hill, Connecticut. They have roles with predicate acts with facts, with a whole bunch of names from Wethersfield campuses, and further with the principal child defender. More obscure pictures on Twitter with the FBI involved with them too, with that, and people with the name Ian that I don't even know. Has something to do with it. There's an Ian that lives near or lived near a Perone family. Increasingly, they have roles of whiting forensics and state police families that are involved with Wethersfield police who wire crimes and forging names, fabricating police reports, fake ties to kids with foreign bodies. Wethersfield police have some Korean families and people from Italy and people from, some Koreans and people from Italy and people from other, all these different countries. And with the campuses intercities. And like there's a Smith family with the intelligence family with the Wethersfield Police Department, where it is now and where it used to be. There's a whole bunch of people making confessions tied to them and demonstrations tied to them because they want us to bring up their names. They also said this with the Kalal family does this. They said, say something about the Kalal. Then it's a trick. In other words, they've been planting evidence all sides with criminal and civil cases and the court's names and family members. A whole bunch of people tied to O'Brien Silver with New Britain Superior Court prosecutors and judges with sexual and medical crimes against kids, federal evidences, crimes against kids roles, identity theft, fraud, slanders. I never had a conversation with Brian Silver in my life. He's increasingly involved with people with untimely deaths and medical corruption, with doctors forging transcripts with the courts and their family members too, speaking fake things into records. There's a Judge Smith years ago associated with a prosecutor named Soulsby as one of the ones involved with a Brian Silver, with various foreign and domestic medical families, ones with badges that have been putting fake transcripts in databases, increasingly criminally foreign influence uses of names next to and at all natures of campuses, including fire and medical campuses. There are a bunch of people, there are people with different real estate agencies involved with the intelligence community and different owners of the building and people that worked for it next across the street on Covington Street in New Britain, Connecticut, next to Central Connecticut State University. Those people having roles with planting evidences also on the other sides of Central Connecticut State University with the people named Violet and Kolvinskis from Wethersfield Intelligence that have been planting evidences on my street with people named Cololo and O'Brien involved with wire crime acts and methods, whole wire crime methods and mail crime methods that various courts have with them. And a whole bunch of people out of the state corrections offices involved with the World Trade Center attack, also with people they said were cousins of theirs, that the police keep bringing up with confessions and people from other countries. As roles with those confessions, it makes a conversation and makes it look like I know the Scaloras, the Scalora family. A subby Scalora has been pretending to know me since I was a kid. Made fake a couple fake, like make a fake exception next to the state, not far from the state judicial branch offices. And then that was before I knew, or he was reportedly by my neighbor and people associated with him tied to being their shared cousin. DeMorrow said it was their cousin too. When they were making, so they would make confessions to me sometimes relative to something I was watching, which something /S I was watching as use of location /S, which I found out it's increasingly at all locations and next to all locations, all natures of conjunctions too. So they're attaching people to fake conversations on a mass scale in ways you're going to discern. Because on a mass scale, there are all kinds of people, all kinds of natures and needs for investigators. Originally and still too, because of a name that's not even present. Like the human fact attribute nature breaching method. That it has other things, others ourselves. Blamed where nature itself can be used to show one of the things that is true always that slavery was about was a human fact attribute nature breaching method. A predicate acts with facts method. Black pupils. Here. So Wethersfield Board of Education has roles with people with the public television location, with some Russians, people from Ukraine, people from Korea, people from Italy involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids. There are doctors associated with the name Harris and Leahy, who have prosecutors and judges also speaking fake things with their family members and planting evidences next to campuses as collusions with all kinds of natures of organized crime, and consciously pretending it's just the legitimate roles with unmarked police forms. They're acting professors. The departments of the campuses individually grouped in together. Rick Paglione is one of the strangers I barely know. I only know him from confessions. He saw me out and regarding his roles with the wire crimes confessions of my neighbors. They have roles, wire crimes, and their educators were putting fake things in class with Rick Paglione in databases. They weren't even in my class. They were in the same grade, but they weren't in my class. I even saw them around the campuses. All exception nature, they try to make it look like it was other. Because these are people are roles with already. Like Cololo has roles reportedly confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with civil and criminal cases, all sides of it, with the courts too, putting fake transcripts, fake evidence. I never gave an affidavit trying to help Ray Cololo out in the case. where he reportedly sued some girl, or it was all made up because he has something to do with the corner of Elm Street and Route 13 in Rocky Hill and Wethersfield with the police chief Cintron in 1 years before that. And he's reportedly tied to a shooting or a murder there, real or made up. He's involved with predicate acts over there. It has something to do with that corner with a Mazzucato family. A Mazzucato family is involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me roles. Also with the Maiano family and the families that live next to Hartford Hospital, who have been planting evidences and identity theft frauds roles with people on all sides of the other campuses. Further, with the principal sex offender with their kids, I had roles with that. A police chief Cintron, and 1 year ago, has medical and sexual offenders of kids with names that also had time collusions with overt criminal enterprises with him. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and other Connecticut police departments. There's a Michael Emmett, also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with the intelligence community, putting fake transcripts and replacing what's actually recorded, and forcing predicate acts between the campuses connected roles and pretending not to realize, but he also has delusions that are relative. They also recorded influence to pretend it's personal because of their roles, to measure. That's part of how they measure and maintain you guys' self-value roles with the sequence shifts and predicate acts that I brought up. So get them on name and paper. There are also judges and prosecutors that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed Michael Emmett as one of the ones involved with them with federal evidences, crimes, and switching and forging names. So fear God to hide and plot. I'll rap a lot. Get on paper. Get on paper. Make sure you get on paper and get me off the fake conversations with yourself and fake behavior. No, too. Fake the aggressive behavior and fake indifference. Watch. Get them on paper. When they follow mandated law, I'll show you how they're so sick so long.